Thank you, Madam Speaker. It might have started as a good idea, but the Liberals, with the support of their NDP allies, just could not resist the temptation to take this opportunity to reshape Canadian culture and society in their own image. So we're here in the House of Commons this evening, late at night, talking about Bill C-11, the so-called Online Streaming Act. This act has morphed into the Liberals' attempt to regulate the internet. And we're hearing from so many Canadians that this is a terrible idea. Now, the Liberals are saying, well, we're just updating the Broadcasting Act, which hasn't been updated in 30 years. And in the meantime, the internet has been invented. And more and more people are getting their news and their entertainment and information off the internet. And fewer people are going to the legacy media. So it's important now that we regulate the internet. But they're saying, oh, this does not affect user-generated content, things that ordinary Canadians post on the internet. But here's the problem. As soon as that user-generated content becomes commercial, then it does fall within the rules, and the CRTC is then going to regulate it and impose the Canadian content rules on it. So the question that we ask then is the obvious question. So at what point does our user-generated content become commercial? And at what point do we have to start worrying about the Canadian content rules? And the answer we get is, don't worry, leave it up to us. We're going to do it right. We're going to leave it up to the CRTC to figure out what the rules are. And so we say, well, can we see the rules? Can we see at least a draft of the rules? And the answer is no, you don't. Trust us. We're the Liberal Party, they say, and we know what Canadian culture is. We know what Canadians want to watch. We will commission the CRTC to come up with the new rules. We will give them a policy directive. So we ask them, can we see the policy directive? And the answer is no. So we, Canadians, are left in the dark. Now, this is very important public policy, and it needs to be debated here in this House of Commons. This is the People's Chamber. The people want to know what's going on. Something so important as the internet, which everybody relies on, has become pervasive in our society. Now, the Senate, the chamber of second thought, the chamber just down the road, looked at this legislation. They didn't approve it. They say, no, there's a problem with it. Get rid of user-generated content altogether. But inexplicably, the Liberal government has said, no, we're not going to change anything. And that, Madam Speaker, is why we Conservatives and so many Canadians are against Bill C-11. We're not alone. We receive so many emails, and I'm sure that members opposite also receive a lot of emails from people who have issues and problems with C-11. But we're also hearing from higher profile people like Margaret Atwood, for example, who has been cited here by several of my colleagues. This is the famous Canadian author, and she was quoted in the Globe and Mail as saying that bureaucrats should not be telling creators what to write. They should not be deciding what is Canadian. This is what she said, quote, so it is creeping totalitarianism if governments are telling creators what to write. Those are not my words. These are the words of Margaret Atwood. Now, she goes on. She's a very fair and balanced person. She acknowledges that C-11 shows some signs of what she says is, quote, well-meaning attempts to achieve some sort of fairness in the marketplace. But like a lot of well-meaning attempts, if people haven't thought it through, the effect might be quite different from what they thought it might be, close quote. Now, is this personal for Ms. Atwood? Well, maybe it is. Her Emmy Award-winning adaptation of her famous A Handmaid's Tale failed the Canadian content rules. Imagine that. Canada's most famous author, not Canadian content. I want to move a little closer to home to a person who lives in Abbotsford, right next door to my community of Langley, Ms. Chris Collins, a.k.a. Call Me Chris, who, through her own ingenuity, creativity, and determination, has become one of Canada's most popular TikTok stars. She has 48 million followers. It's phenomenal. She is known around the world. She has learned how to monetize her social media presence, and in the process, she's making a lot of money at it. So good for her. And all of this, Madam Speaker, without the help or the intervention of the CRTC, Ms. Collins figured out on her own what Canadians want, what the world wants. She knows how to market herself. She didn't need the government. But this is what she says about the Liberal government's attempt to change all of that. And I have a quote here. "I am scared. I have been paying really close attention to Bill C-11, aka the Online Streaming Act. It is something my fellow Canadian creators should be paying attention to, and all viewers as well. Bill C-11 was supposed to be promoting Canadian storytelling online, but in reality, the bill ended up so broadly worded that it lets the CRTC intervene with every part of your online life." Close quote. So this is exactly what Conservatives have been talking about, Liberal overreach. Now we talked about the Senate, the Chamber of Sober Second Thought, as it likes to call itself, or Canadians call it. And I have a quote from one of the senators, Honourable David Richards. And this is what he had to say about Bill C-11. This is I'll just quote the first sentence of his speech. "Honourable Senators," he said, "I have a good deal of problems with this bill. I think it's censorship passing as national inclusion." Close quote. Now we hear from the Liberals saying, well, this is not censorship at all. People are free to post whatever they want. They can write whatever they want. We're not telling them what not to write or what not to post. But here's the problem. A bureaucratic body, the CRTC, will be tasked with deciding what to promote and consequently then what to demote on the internet, all based on that body's idea of what is good Canadian content, keeping in mind that Margaret Atwood didn't pass the test. So Senator Richard goes on to say, talk about equality. So he's quoting somebody who commented a lot about equality, and that is author George Orwell, who in his novel Animal Farm said, yes, of course, right, in that society that he was talking about, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And that's the issue here. That's why so many Canadians are upset with this legislation. They are feeling like they are less equal than people who might agree with the Liberal government's idea of what is Canadian culture and what is good for our society. I want to quote from one of those ordinary Canadians. This is a person who lives in my riding, Barry Springman, who wrote me a very thoughtful email. Now, I've gotten a lot of emails, and the vast majority, hundreds of them, the vast majority are clearly against C-11, urging us to vote against it. There are a handful that had some reserved support for the bill. I just wanted to get that on the record. I wanted to be fair. But this is what Mr. Springman said. "Our family has lived in Langley, BC for the past 16 years and have family ties to the city for almost 50 years. We have enjoyed the freedoms we have as Canadians to choose what we want to see on the internet, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. In the past few years, we are seeing these freedoms erode. While we are always careful to warn our kids of the potential dangers of some of the content on the internet, we are very much against the government deciding what we should have access to. Therefore, we would like to express our deep displeasure in the federal government's attempt to pass Bill C-11. In no way do we support the passing of this bill." Close quote. Now, this is just a sample. Don't have time to read more. When I was a kid, my dad used to tell me and my brothers, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Now, we'll grant that the government C-11 initiative started probably with good intentions, but in typical overreach, Bill C-11 went off the rails. So my question to the Liberals is, I know that they're not going to take advice from the Conservatives because they always say that they don't have to, but will they take advice from ordinary Canadian citizens, from experts in the field, from people like the Springman family? Will they at least take advice from the Senate, who is telling them that this legislation is wrong? Thank you.